My journey to Ayers Rock. Uluru. I saw similarities between the Alaskan natives and the Aboriginals in Australia. For example, the town in Alaska named Barrow was recently renamed Uktiavik. It sure brought tension and division in Alaska based on this news article. The town in Canada named Frobisher Bay was renamed to Iqaluit. It was a new trend to rename towns and places to the original names, it seemed. The two names became synonymous. Even though Ayers Rock was changed to Uluru, the name still lingers with Ayers Rock Resort and the Ayers Rock Uluru Airport. Welcome to Uluru. Even my ticket said Ayers Rock Uluru on it. My journey to Uluru wasn't meant to offend anyone or disrespect anyone, but rather to see the symbol of Australia. That rock is one of the several monolith rocks in the world. I went to see the one in Nigeria near Abuja named Zuma Rock. There is another one near Atlanta named Stone Mountain. One of the subjects I studied in university was geology, so going to these places around the world interested me. This was one of the factors pulling me to visit the rock first when I came to Australia. When I heard that Uluru was being closed permanently, I decided to make another pilgrimage to visit the rock. After all, I had enjoyed the environment and atmosphere so much the first time that I couldn't resist coming to experience it one last time. I heard about the controversy whether or not to climb the rock. Being a sociologist, I wanted to know why people do what they do. Why do some people want to climb it while others don't? There was the recommendation by the Anangu people to refrain from climbing the rock. They had a valid point. But why did the Rangers and Park Service still allow it? Was it merely a personal choice? Sometimes, to fully understand an issue, you have to fully embrace yourself in the environment, both amongst the non-climbers and the climbers. Thus, I started my journey to Uluru to make one final climb before it closed. What I noticed on the last day for climbing was astounding. I learned many Australians were climbing, but without telling any friends or family. It was almost like being a secret climber. You wanted to climb the rock, but knew it would get a lot of backlash from friends and family back home. Is there a name of this type of climber? Perhaps a closet climber? Indeed, I met several people who came to do the hike, yet told nobody about it. It was some sort of secret challenge they had. This goes back to people's curiosity. Everyone is curious. It is only human nature. And when you hear this is the last chance to climb a national icon, it drove thousands of people to visit Uluru before the climb would officially close on October 26th. I learned Uluru never got so many visitors in its history than on the months prior to its closure. I caught a flight from Las Vegas, transited in Los Angeles and Melbourne, before touchdown in Ayers Rock Uluru Airport. I was here to soak in the experience for the last day for climbers. As expected, the media was also making their way to document and report on the big day, both for the climbers and for the Anangu people. Day 1. Boarding my flight, I happened to sit next to Tony Wright, a journalist for The Age. On the 2.5-hour flight, he decided to interview me and write up an article for the morning paper. He did a good job, but somewhere along the lines, the end result of the morning newspaper portrayed it that I insisted on it being called Ayers Rock. I knew it was called Uluru. Of course, the next morning when everyone read it in the newspaper, it caused a stir amongst the readers. Landing at the airport, we rented a car, dropped off our luggage at the hotel, and drove to the national park to take a look at the rock. We learned it had been open only for an hour between 7 and 8 a.m. in the morning, but it had closed due to temperatures being over 36 degrees centigrade. Hot weather was serious business because it could lead to heat stroke amongst tourists not prepared. After a few photos and chats with other people, we returned to the hotel to relax for the evening. The last day was tomorrow, and we wanted to be well rested and prepared. It was the big day for all of us, tourists, climbers, the media, and the Anangu people. I had booked no accommodations, but I would meet Rowdy and Daniel at the Pioneer Hotel and Lodge, and they agreed to host me during my stay. Rowdy told me he had heard about the closure about a year ago, and thought the climb had closed last October 26th. It was one of the worst feelings he had ever had to miss the climb. When he found out he had misread the news and that it was 2019, he immediately booked his flights and hotels right away. So he invited his friend Daniel to join. Day 2. This was the big day, and everyone was excited. I got up at 4:30 a.m., and we drove out to the park just before 6 a.m., directly to the car park at the base of the mountain. The media was setting up their cameras, and journalists were talking with the climbers arriving. I looked on as the commotion started. Soon, a line for the climb formed, and soon it would reach over 200 people. There were 5 assessments for the weather starting at 7 a.m., 8, 10, 12 p.m., and 2 p.m. Weather factors at those times would be determining whether the climbers could ascend the rock. Unlike the previous day, the 7 a.m. assessment led the rangers to keep the climb closed due to high winds.
And if you're wondering what sort of people are here to make that climb one last time, well, there's lots of Aussies as expected. There's a lot of people from Asia, but also there's actually a real number of Americans. Now, I spoke to one fellow, Jason. Take a listen.
I'm here in Uluru today because I heard it's going to be closing today. So about 6 months ago, I decided to come back and climb it one last time. People stayed in line for the next assessment at 8 a.m., but it would produce the same results. It was ironic how weather was unfavorable on the last day. Some hikers gave up and decided to walk around the base until the next assessment at 10 a.m. The 10 a.m. assessment provided fruitful, and cheers would be heard as the rangers gave the thumbs up for opening the hike for the last time. The first climbers made a sprint for the base to commence the climb. I didn't need to be first.
Visitors are running up Uluru after a delay in opening the gates for the last time this morning.
I was here for the experience and to absorb the atmosphere of the day. I made my decision to climb Uluru based on several factors. I was fit, I had water, I wanted to talk with other climbers to get a better understanding of their reasons. And it was the last day. Some people say it was a poor choice on my part, but I assured not to leave any trash behind, write any graffiti, or damage anything on the rock. As the saying goes, take only photos and leave only footprints. The rock was composed of sandstone and iron oxide. I learned from a guide that this rock was growing at a rate of 1/4 of an inch to 1 inch per year. The rock material was quite unique in my opinion, and I haven't quite seen anything like it. The beginning of the climb was a bit challenging, but the chain link fence helped. Climbing to the top reminded me of the scenes from the Klondike Gold Rush. We all formed the Congo line. Camaraderie during any hike around the world has a good atmosphere. Everyone has one goal in mind, and that is to reach the top. We all helped each other. Once at the top, landscapes were out of this world. There were a few places in the world that looked so foreign. On top of Uluru reminded me of a Martian landscape. There were ravines, small craters, and gullies at the top, created by rain. The footpath went up and down until it reached the very top, where a plaque was built with information embedded, and the compass rose to enlighten hikers. Someone even brought up a book called A Guide to Climbing Ayers Rock. Talk about enthusiasts. I was surprised to see young children running and climbing the steep ravines. A low center of gravity and light weight helped the children manage their climb. Overall, the climb wasn't difficult as long as you kept balance, walked carefully, and had water with you. The views from the top were phenomenal. You could see the Olgas, which was apparently the same mountain range as Uluru, yet a different rock material, also known as Kata Tajuta. Vegetation on the top depended on any sand, dust, or dirt being blown up there, and then shrubs, bushes, and small plants would grow. They soaked up the water through the cracks in the rock. The only wildlife up there that I saw were birds, some sort of small beetles, and of course, pesky flies. The rock had small holes resembling caves, formed by water. The topography was so unique, and this is why I imagined it to be a Martian landscape. I learned by talking to other people that some climbed the rock in the morning with their family, returned back to their hotel to have lunch and take a swim in a swimming pool, and then returned in the afternoon for another hike. Others decided to stay at the top all day to enjoy the serenity the landscape offered. As the motto went, "Hear the silence." Indeed, this was the case. As the afternoon came, I observed the clientele. There were families, Chinese, Japanese, and your local Australians. Each group had their own method of experiencing the climb. Some raced to the top, took photos, and returned back down in an efficient manner. Others came to experience the solitude and peacefulness in the environment. Nobody wanted anything to go wrong on the last day, since the media was down below watching. I met some guys who hiked this rock 8 times and came to do it one last time. After talking with others, I learned that some people called in sick from work, others took time off work, and others simply skipped school just to make this hike. To them, it was a really important event. For those Australians calling in sick for work, they really had to hide any trace of their hike. It was interesting to note just how important this climb was for some people. I even met a journalist on his personal days off from work. He was one of the last ones down the mountain, yet he didn't want to be the last one or be seen by the media. Drama unfolded when one of the hikers got stricken with heat exhaustion at the top. Rangers and the police had to help him recuperate by giving him cold water and a few snacks and salt to get him back to normal. Heat exhaustion was a serious thing. He had brought 2.5 liters of Gatorade, but apparently that wasn't enough. Lastly, there was a group of hikers that truly wanted to be the last ones off this rock. They milled around at the top, talked with others, enjoyed the quietness, and took in the views. The hike would close at sunset, so an hour prior, the rangers ushered climbers to start the return trek. Among the 8 last climbers was a father with his 2 sons, a Singaporean, an Asian from Sydney, an older Australian in his 60s, an Australian in a Superman shirt, and myself. All 8 of us wanted to be last down the rock, but who would get that title? The rangers had to keep coaxing us to keep moving.
We're all doing it, guys, because we all want to be the last ones. How about we all just get down to the bottom and then we all step off together? It's easy that way, you know? We're not allowed to be up here when it's dark, so let's go.
The helicopter looked for any last climbers on the rock. Finally, at the bottom, before stepping off the rock, we decided to all hold hands and step off the rock as a group. That way, we could all claim the title as the last person off the rock. As we filed out the gate, Superman decided to strangle behind slowly and gain fame as the last person off the mountain. I didn't mind. He was Australian, so why not give a local the honor? I got my 45 seconds in front of the news cameras for a few comments, so I was happy. The last day had been a success for all parties involved. The thousands of climbers had enjoyed their last hike, everyone came down safely, and the Anangu people were happy to see it closed. I gained an appreciation for the mountain and felt satisfied for the day well spent. I joined Tony and his crew back to the hotel, and that ended my 2 days in Uluru. The third day, I said goodbye to my hosts, Rowdy and Daniel, and I would head back to the airport by hitchhiking to catch my flight back to Melbourne via Sydney on Jetstar Airways. I hope I didn't offend anyone, and if so, my apologies in advance. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more adventures.